The morning sun cast long shadows across the ancient stones of Castle as President stepped out of his armored vehicle. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of dying leaves and the distant sound of bagpipes echoing through the Scottish Highlands. This was no ordinary diplomatic visit to the Kingdom of. The stakes were higher than anyone in his administration fully understood, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his broad shoulders. President had built his reputation on bold moves and unconventional diplomacy. At 62, his silver hair and piercing blue eyes commanded attention in any room, but today felt different. Today, he was about to meet Princess Isabella of, a woman whose grace and intelligence had captured the hearts of her people, and whose recent health struggles had touched the world. More importantly, he was here to see Prince Alexander, her husband, who had become not just a royal figure but a personal friend during their previous encounters at international summits. The castle's ancient walls had witnessed centuries of history, from medieval battles to royal weddings, but rarely had they hosted a meeting that could potentially reshape the relationship between two of the world's most influential nations. The president's staff moved with practiced efficiency around him, each member acutely aware that their boss had a tendency to throw protocol out the window when he felt it was necessary. His chief of staff, Sarah Mitchell, had briefed him extensively on the proper etiquette for meeting royalty, but she knew better than to expect him to follow every rule. As they approached the massive oak doors of the castle's main entrance, President paused for a moment. He thought about his own daughter, who had faced her own health challenges years ago, and how helpless he had felt watching her struggle. The parallel wasn't lost on him. Prince Alexander, despite his royal status and public composure, was simply a husband watching the woman he loved fight a battle that no amount of wealth or power could easily influence. The president's relationship with the royal family had evolved over the past 3 years. What began as formal diplomatic exchanges had grown into genuine mutual respect, and in some cases, friendship. Prince Alexander had visited the White House twice, and their conversations had moved beyond politics to discussions about family, responsibility, and the burden of public service. The prince had confided in him about the challenges of balancing his royal duties with his desire to protect his family's privacy, especially during Princess Isabella's health crisis. The massive doors swung open, revealing the castle's grand foyer. Portraits of long-dead monarchs gazed down from the walls, their painted eyes seeming to judge every visitor who dared enter their ancestral home. The president had seen many impressive buildings in his time, from the halls of Congress to the palaces of foreign dignitaries, but Castle possessed a timeless majesty that commanded reverence. The polished marble floors reflected the light from enormous crystal chandeliers, creating a kaleidoscope of dancing shadows and brilliance. Royal protocol dictated that the president would be formally announced, and then wait in a receiving room until summoned for his audience with the royal couple. However, President had never been one to follow conventional paths when he felt a more direct approach was needed. His security detail, led by Agent Collins, had worked closely with the castle's security team to ensure that any deviation from protocol would still maintain the highest levels of safety for all involved. The Lord Chamberlain, a dignified man in his 70s named Sir Edmund, approached with measured steps. His formal attire and carefully composed expression spoke of decades serving the royal family. He had overseen countless diplomatic visits and had developed an almost supernatural ability to maintain protocol while accommodating the sometimes unpredictable nature of international leaders. Today, however, he sensed something different in the American president's demeanor, a barely contained energy that suggested this visit would not proceed according to the carefully planned schedule. "Mr. President," Sir Edmund began with a formal bow, "Their Royal Highnesses are preparing to receive you in the blue drawing room. If you would be so kind as to follow me to the morning room, we can observe the traditional waiting period before." President raised his hand gently but firmly. "Sir Edmund, I appreciate the protocol, I truly do, but I'm hoping we might be able to arrange something a bit more personal. I understand Princess Isabella has been having a difficult time lately, and I'd like to speak with Prince Alexander privately first, if that's possible." The Lord Chamberlain's eyebrows rose slightly. In his 40 years of service, he had rarely encountered such a direct request to bypass royal protocol. However, he had been briefed on the president's reputation for unconventional approaches, and he was aware that Prince Alexander had specifically requested flexibility in how this meeting would be conducted. The prince had, in fact, expressed his own desire for a more informal interaction, though he hadn't exactly what that might entail. "That is highly unusual, Mr. President. However, I believe I can arrange for a brief private audience with His Royal Highness before the formal reception. Might I ask the nature of your request?" President's expression softened, revealing the compassion that his political opponents often missed beneath his bold exterior. "Sir Edmund, I'm here not just as the President of the United States, but as someone who understands what it's like to watch someone you love face uncertainty. I have something I'd like to give Princess Isabella, something that I think might mean more coming as a personal gesture rather than a formal diplomatic exchange." The sincerity in the President's voice was unmistakable. Sir Edmund had served the royal family long enough to recognize genuine emotion, and what he saw in the American leader's eyes was not political calculation but human empathy. He nodded slowly, understanding that sometimes the most meaningful moments in diplomacy occurred when the formal structures were set aside in favor of authentic human connection. "Very well, Mr. President. I will speak with His Royal Highness immediately. Please wait here, and I will return shortly with his response." As Sir Edmund departed with swift, purposeful steps, President found himself alone in the grand foyer except for his security detail. He walked slowly toward one of the tall windows that looked out over the castle's gardens. The autumn landscape stretched before him, a tapestry of gold and crimson that seemed to glow in the morning light. In the distance, he could see the mountains that had protected this kingdom for centuries, their peaks shrouded in mist and legend. The president reached into his jacket pocket and felt the small, carefully wrapped package he had brought with him. It wasn't valuable in monetary terms, but its significance was profound. During his daughter's own health struggles years ago, a young girl from a small town in Montana had sent her a hand-carved wooden rose with a letter explaining that her grandmother had made it as a symbol of hope and healing. His daughter had kept that rose by her bedside throughout her recovery, and she had insisted that her father bring it to Princess Isabella. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the foyer as Sir Edmund returned, his pace slightly quicker than before. Behind him walked Prince Alexander, his tall frame and confident stride unmistakable even in the dim light of the corridor. The prince had chosen to wear a simple navy suit rather than his formal military dress uniform, a choice that suggested he, too, preferred a more personal approach to this meeting. Prince Alexander was 38 years old, with the kind of natural dignity that came from a lifetime of public service, tempered by genuine warmth and intelligence. His marriage to Princess Isabella 5 years earlier had been celebrated not just as a royal wedding, but as a love story that captured the imagination of people around the world. Their partnership had strengthened both of them, and his devotion to her during her recent health challenges had only deepened the public's affection for them both. "Mr. President," Prince Alexander said as he approached, extending his hand in greeting. "Thank you for making this journey. I know your schedule is incredibly demanding, and your willingness to come here personally means more than I can express." President grasped the prince's hand firmly, nodding the slight tension in the younger man's grip. "Your Highness, there was never any question about coming. How is Princess Isabella doing today?" The prince's composure wavered for just a moment, revealing the strain he had been carrying. "She's having a good day today, actually. The new treatment seems to be helping, and she's been looking forward to meeting with you. She specifically asked me to tell you how much she appreciates your taking the time for this visit." "I have something for her," President said quietly. "Something from my family to yours, but before we proceed with any formal ceremonies, I wanted to speak with you privately, man to man, not as heads of state." Prince Alexander glanced at Sir Edmund, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The Lord Chamberlain had served the royal family faithfully for decades, and his judgment in matters of protocol was trusted implicitly. If he felt this departure from tradition was appropriate, then the prince was willing to follow his lead. "Of course," Prince Alexander replied. "Perhaps we could walk in the gardens. The morning air might do us both some good, and it would give us the privacy we need for a frank conversation." As they prepared to step outside, neither man could have anticipated how profoundly this departure from diplomatic protocol would affect not only their own relationship, but the future of their two nations. The decision to speak as equals, rather than as representatives of their respective governments, would create a foundation of trust and understanding that would prove invaluable in the challenges that lay ahead. The autumn morning beckoned them forward, promising a conversation that would be remembered long after the formal aspects of this diplomatic visit had faded from memory. in choosing to prioritize human connection over political protocol. Both men were about to discover that sometimes the most important diplomatic breakthroughs happen not in conference rooms, but in quiet moments of genuine understanding between individuals who recognize their shared humanity, despite the vast differences in their circumstances and responsibilities. The castle gardens in autumn were a masterpiece of natural beauty, carefully tended by generations of royal gardeners. Ancient oak trees spread their branches like protective umbrellas over winding gravel paths, while carefully manicured flower beds displayed the last blooms of the season. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the earthy scent of fallen leaves and the distant aroma of wood smoke from the castle's many fireplaces. President and Prince Alexander walked side by side along the main garden path, their security details maintaining a respectful distance that allowed for private conversation while ensuring complete safety. The American president had dismissed most of his usual entourage for this walk, keeping only his essential protection team. It was a gesture that Prince Alexander recognized and appreciated, understanding that it signified the president's desire for genuine dialogue rather than a photo opportunity. "You know," President began, his voice carrying a tone of reflection rather than his usual commanding presence, "when my daughter Emma was diagnosed with her condition 12 years ago, I thought my position as a public figure would somehow make it easier. I believed that having access to the best doctors, the finest hospitals, and unlimited resources would shield us from the fear and uncertainty that other families face." Prince Alexander listened intently, recognizing the vulnerability in the president's words. It was rare for someone in their position to speak so openly about personal struggles, especially with someone they had met only a few times before. Yet something about the morning air and the timeless setting of the castle gardens seemed to encourage honesty. "I discovered very quickly," the president continued, "that when someone you love is facing a health crisis, all the power and influence in the world becomes meaningless. You're just another worried family member, hopping and praying for good news, trying to maintain strength for everyone around you while feeling completely helpless inside." The prince nodded slowly, his own experiences of the past several months reflected in every word the president spoke. "The hardest part," he said quietly, "is maintaining the public facade. Isabella and I both understand our responsibility to the people of. They look to us for stability, for hope, for leadership. But there are moments when I just want to be a husband who's scared about his wife's health, not a prince who must remain composed for the cameras." They paused beside an ornate fountain that had been a wedding gift to Prince Alexander's grandparents 70 years earlier. The water cascaded gently over carved stone figures representing the four seasons, each one weathered by time but still beautiful in its own way. The sound of the flowing water created a peaceful backdrop for their conversation, masking their words from any potential listeners. President reached into his jacket and the small wrapped package he had been carrying. "Emma wanted me to give this to Princess Isabella personally. During her treatment, she received hundreds of gifts from well-wishers around the world. Most were flowers or cards or stuffed animals, all meaningful in their own way. But this one was different." He carefully unwrapped the package, revealing a hand-carved wooden rose, no more than 4 inches tall. The craftsmanship was exquisite despite its simple materials. Each petal had been carefully shaped and smoothed, and the stem bore tiny thorns that looked almost real. The wood had aged to a warm honey color that seemed to glow in the morning light. "It came from a little girl named Sally in Whitefish, Montana," the president explained. "Her grandmother had carved it from a piece of apple wood from their family orchard. The letter that came with it said that her grandmother believed apple wood carried the essence of growth and renewal, and that anyone who kept the rose close during times of trouble would find the strength to bloom again." Prince Alexander took the wooden rose carefully, turning it over in his hands and marveling at the delicate detail work. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "But surely this holds special meaning for your daughter. I can't possibly accept something so personal." "Emma insisted," President replied with a gentle smile. "She said that the rose had done its work for her, and that its magic needed to be passed along to someone else who could benefit from it. She specifically asked me to tell Princess Isabella that sometimes the most powerful healing comes not from medicine or technology, but from the love and hope that people share with one another." The two men stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, each lost in his own thoughts about family, responsibility, and the unexpected connections that can form between strangers facing similar challenges. The autumn sun climbed higher in the sky, casting dappled shadows through the tree branches and warming the air around them. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you," President said eventually, his tone becoming more serious. "Something that goes beyond our personal situations but relates to them in important ways." Prince Alexander looked up from the wooden rows, sensing a shift in the conversation's direction. "I'm listening. The relationship between our countries has been strong for many years, but I believe we have an opportunity to deepen that partnership in ways that could benefit both our peoples. Not through traditional trade agreements or military alliances, though those remain important, but through something more fundamental." The president paused, choosing his words carefully. "What if we could create a framework for sharing not just resources and information, but hope and healing? What if we could establish programs that connect families facing similar challenges, regardless of which side of the ocean they live on?" Prince Alexander's eyes brightened with interest. "What did you have in mind?" "Isabella's battle with her illness has inspired people around the world. Your grace and strength as a couple has given hope to countless families facing their own struggles. My daughter's experience taught us that healing often comes through connection, through knowing that you're not alone in your fight." President gestured toward the castle, where Princess Isabella was preparing for their meeting. "What if we could formalize that connection, create exchange programs for families dealing with serious illnesses, establish research partnerships between our best medical institutions, develop support networks that transcend national boundaries?" The idea was ambitious and unprecedented. Traditional diplomatic initiatives focused on economic interests or strategic advantages. What the president was proposing was a foreign policy built on empathy and shared human experience. "The Isabella Initiative," Prince Alexander said suddenly, the name coming to him as naturally as breathing. "We could call it the Isabella Initiative, focusing on international cooperation in healthcare, family support, and hope-sharing programs." President's face lit up with enthusiasm. "Exactly. And it wouldn't be just another government program. It would be something personal, something that reflects the real experiences of real families. Your wife's courage could inspire legislation that helps millions of people." They began walking again, their pace quickening with excitement as they developed the idea further. The security teams adjusted their positions automatically, maintaining their protective formations while allowing the two leaders the space they needed for their animated discussion. "We could start with pediatric programs," Prince Alexander suggested. "Partner our children's hospitals with yours, create pen pal networks for young patients, establish family exchange opportunities for treatment and support. And research collaborations," the president added. "Pool our resources and expertise to accelerate medical breakthroughs. Share data more effectively, reduce bureaucratic barriers that slow down potentially life-saving treatments." As they rounded a bend in the garden path, they found themselves approaching the castle's side entrance, where Princess Isabella's private quarters were located. The reality of their upcoming meeting brought their planning session back to the present moment, but both men felt energized by the possibilities they had just discussed. "Before we meet with Isabella," Prince Alexander said, "I want you to know how much this conversation has meant to me. Not just as a prince or as a representative of my country, but as a man who has felt very alone in carrying certain burdens." President placed a firm hand on the younger man's shoulder. "That's exactly why initiatives like this matter. Nobody should have to face life's biggest challenges in isolation, whether they're regular citizens or people in positions like ours." As they climbed the stone steps leading to the castle's entrance, both men carried with them not only the wooden rose that would soon be presented to Princess Isabella, but also the seeds of an idea that would grow into one of the most meaningful diplomatic initiatives either of their nations had ever undertaken. The morning's conversation had transformed what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic visit into the foundation for a partnership that would touch thousands of lives in ways they were only beginning to imagine. The massive wooden doors opened before them, and they stepped into the castle's warmth, ready to share their vision with Princess Isabella and begin the work of turning compassionate ideas into concrete action that would honor both the struggles and the hopes of families facing uncertainty around the world. The blue drawing room of Castle had hosted countless important meetings throughout its storied history, but rarely had it witnessed such a blend of personal vulnerability and diplomatic innovation. Princess Isabella sat gracefully in a high-backed chair near the room's magnificent fireplace, the dancing flames casting a warm glow that complemented her natural radiance despite the challenges she had been facing. At 29, she possessed an ethereal beauty that came not from perfect features, but from an inner strength that seemed to illuminate everything around her. Her honey hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and though she had lost some weight during her treatments, her posture remained regal and her smile genuine. She wore a simple but elegant dress in deep sapphire blue, a color that brought out the striking blue of her eyes and had become something of a signature for her public appearances. The choice to meet in her private quarters rather than a formal receiving room had been deliberate, signaling her desire for an authentic conversation rather than a ceremonial exchange. When President and Prince Alexander entered the room, Princess Isabella rose gracefully to greet them. Despite protocol suggesting she could remain seated given her status and condition, she insisted on standing for their introduction. The president was immediately struck by her presence, understanding instantly why the people have held such deep affection for their princess. "Mr. President," she said with a warm smile, extending her hand in greeting, "welcome to our home. Alexander has told me so much about your conversations at previous summits, and I've been looking forward to finally meeting you in person." President took her hand gently, bowing slightly in a gesture that managed to be both respectful and natural. "Your Royal Highness, the honor is entirely mine. I hope you'll forgive me for saying so, but you look absolutely radiant. Your strength during these challenging times has been an inspiration to people around the world, including my own family." Princess Isabella's eyes brightened at the mention of his family. "How is your daughter Emma? Alexander mentioned that she faced her own health challenges some years ago. I hope she's doing well now." "She is, thank you for asking. In fact, she insisted that I bring you something from her personally." The president reached into his jacket and the wooden rose, still carefully wrapped in its simple cloth covering. "She wanted you to have this, along with a message about hope and healing that I think you'll find meaningful." As the president unwrapped the carved rose, Princess Isabella gasped softly at its simple beauty. The honey-colored wood seemed to capture and reflect the firelight, making the carefully crafted petals appear almost alive. She accepted the gift with reverent hands, turning it slowly to admire the intricate detail work. "It's absolutely beautiful," she whispered. "But tell me about its story. I can sense that this holds special significance." President shared the tale of Sally and her grandmother's belief in the healing power of apple wood, explaining how the rose had been a constant companion during Emma's recovery. As he spoke, Princess Isabella held the carving close to her heart, her eyes filling with tears that she made no attempt to hide. "Please tell Emma that her gift has already begun working," Princess Isabella said softly. "Just knowing that she thought of me, that she wanted to share something so precious with a stranger across the ocean, fills me with more hope than any medicine could provide." Prince Alexander moved closer to his wife's chair, and she reached out to take his hand. The simple gesture spoke volumes about their partnership and the strength they drew from each other. President found himself thinking of his own wife and how they had supported each other through their daughter's illness. "Your Highness," the president said, "Alexander and I were discussing an idea during our walk that we'd very much like to share with you. It's something that could honor your own journey while helping countless other families facing similar challenges." Princess Isabella looked between the two men with curiosity and growing excitement. "Please, tell me everything." Prince Alexander took the lead in explaining their vision for what they were calling the Isabella Initiative. As he described the proposed programs for international medical cooperation, family support networks, and hope-sharing initiatives, Princess Isabella's expression shifted from surprise to deep thoughtfulness to genuine enthusiasm. "You want to name it after me?" she asked, clearly moved by the gesture but also concerned about the responsibility it would entail. "Not just name it after you," President clarified. "We want you to help shape it, to be a founding partner in creating something that reflects your own experiences and insights. Your voice, your story, your understanding of what families need during their darkest moments could guide programs that help thousands of people." Princess Isabella was quiet for several long moments, staring into the fire as she considered the magnitude of what they were proposing. Finally, she looked up with a determination that seemed to fill the entire room. "If we're going to do this," she said firmly, "we need to do it properly. not as a publicity initiative or a diplomatic gesture, but as something real and lasting that actually changes lives. She stood up from her chair and moved to a writing desk near one of the tall windows. I've been keeping a journal throughout my treatment, documenting not just the medical aspects but the emotional journey, the fears, the hopes, the small victories and setbacks that never make it into official reports. Returning with a leather-bound journal, she continued, I've also been corresponding with other patients and families from around the world. People who reached out to share their own stories, to offer support, or simply to say that they're praying for my recovery. What I've learned is that healing happens in the connections between people, in the sharing of experiences and hope. President and Prince Alexander exchanged glances, both recognizing that Princess Isabella had just elevated their idea from a diplomatic initiative to something far more meaningful and personal. What if, Princess Isabella continued, her voice gaining strength and excitement, the Isabella Initiative included a component where patients and families could share their stories directly, not through government channels or medical institutions, but through personal connections that transcend borders and circumstances. She opened her journal and showed them pages filled with letters from children, parents, grandparents, and patients from dozens of countries. These people have taught me that hope is contagious, that courage can be shared across any distance, and that sometimes the most powerful medicine is knowing that you're not alone. The president leaned forward, completely captivated by her vision. You're talking about creating a global community of healing. Exactly, Princess Isabella replied. But more than that, what if we could connect children in hospitals in America with children in hospitals herein? What if families dealing with similar diagnoses could share resources, experiences, and encouragement regardless of which country they live in? Prince Alexander watched his wife with undisguised admiration as she outlined her thoughts. This was the Isabella he had fallen in love with, the woman who could take any challenge and transform it into an opportunity to help others. Her illness had not diminished her spirit. If anything, it had focused her compassion laser-sharp precision. We could establish sister hospital partnerships, Princess Isabella continued, her ideas flowing rapidly now. Create pen-pal programs for young patients, develop cultural exchange opportunities for families during treatment, and establish emergency support networks for families who need specialized care that isn't available in their home countries. President pulled out his phone and began taking notes, trying to capture the rapid-fire ideas that were pouring forth. This is exactly what I was hoping would happen, he said with genuine excitement. You're taking our basic concept and turning it into something comprehensive and meaningful. But we need to be careful, Princess Isabella added, her pragmatic side asserting itself. This can't become another bureaucratic program that looks good on paper but doesn't actually help people. We need to build it from the ground up, with input from patients and families who understand what's really needed. She moved to a cabinet and a folder filled with more correspondence. I've been collecting suggestions and ideas from the people who written to me. Children who wanted to share their artwork with other sick children, parents who developed innovative ways to help their children cope with treatment, doctors who have ideas for better international cooperation. Prince Alexander stood up and joined his wife by the window. What you're describing would require significant resources and coordination between multiple governments and institutions. That's where the presidential and royal involvement becomes crucial, Princess Isabella replied. We can open doors, cut through bureaucratic barriers, and provide the high-level support needed to make ambitious programs actually work. President joined them at the window, looking out over the castle grounds where he and Prince Alexander had first discussed these ideas just hours earlier. What you're proposing goes far beyond anything I initially imagined. You're talking about fundamentally changing how nations cooperate on humanitarian issues. Why shouldn't we? Princess Isabella asked with a smile that was both gentle and fierce. If our positions give us the platform to make a real difference in people's lives, don't we have an obligation to use that platform for something meaningful? The three of them stood together in comfortable silence, each contemplating the magnitude of what they were considering. Outside, the autumn afternoon was giving way to evening, and the first stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Inside the blue drawing room, the fire continued to crackle warmly, and the wooden rose from Montana sat on the table nearby, a tangible symbol of the hope and connection that could flow between strangers separated by vast distances. but united by shared human experience. "So," Prince Alexander said finally, "are we really going to do this?" Princess Isabella picked up the wooden rose and held it carefully in both hands. "I think we have to do this. Not just for ourselves, but for Sally's grandmother, for Emma, for every family that's ever felt alone in facing life's biggest challenges." President nodded firmly. "Then let's begin planning how to turn the Isabella initiative from an idea into reality." The Great Hall of Castle had been transformed into an impromptu planning center as evening approached. Ancient tapestries depicting centuries of royal history looked down upon an unprecedented scene. The President of the United States, the Prince and Princess of, and their closest advisors gathered around massive oak tables covered with laptops, documents, and handwritten notes. The formal dinner planned for the evening had been postponed, as the three leaders became completely absorbed in developing their revolutionary initiative. Princess Isabella had insisted on being actively involved in every aspect of the planning, despite her medical team's gentle suggestions that she should rest. Her energy seemed to increase as the scope of their project became clearer, and her insights consistently elevated their discussions from theoretical concepts to practical solutions that could genuinely impact lives. "The biggest challenge we're going to face," said Dr. President's senior health policy advisor, "is coordinating between different healthcare systems, insurance structures, and regulatory frameworks. What works in the American system might not translate directly to National Health Service." Princess Isabella looked up from the pages of notes she had been reviewing. "That's exactly why we need to start with the human connections first, rather than the institutional ones. If we can demonstrate that direct patient-to-patient and family-to-family connections create measurable improvements in outcomes and quality of life, the institutional support will follow." Sir Edmund, who had been quietly observing the unprecedented planning session, stepped forward with a silver tea service. Despite the informal nature of the gathering, he maintained his commitment to ensuring that proper refreshments were available. The Earl tea and delicate shortbread biscuits provided a touch of traditional comfort in the midst of their revolutionary planning. "What if we started with a pilot program?" suggested Prince Alexander, spreading a map of both countries across the table. "We could select 2 hospitals, one in each country, and create a comprehensive partnership between them. Every aspect we're discussing could be tested and refined on a smaller scale before expanding internationally." President studied the map thoughtfully. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has been a leader in pediatric innovation for decades. They've expressed interest in international partnerships, and their patient families have been incredibly supportive of outreach programs. "And herein," Princess Isabella added, pointing to a location on the map, "the Royal Children's Medical Center has a remarkable staff and a history of pioneering patient care programs. Dr. Elizabeth, their chief of pediatrics, has been advocating for exactly the kind of international cooperation we're discussing." Sarah Mitchell, the president's chief of staff, had been furiously taking notes throughout the discussion. "The logistics are going to be complex, but not impossible. We'll need agreements between the hospitals, coordination with immigration services for family exchanges, insurance arrangements for international treatment, and communication systems that can handle different languages and time zones. Most importantly," Princess Isabella emphasized, "we need to ensure that the program serves patients and families rather than political interests. The moment this becomes about diplomacy instead of healing, we'll lose the very essence of what makes it meaningful." As if summoned by her words, a young staff member approached the table carrying a tablet computer. "Your Royal Highness, we've received several video messages from families who heard about your meeting with President today. They wanted to share their thoughts about international medical cooperation." Princess Isabella's eyes lit up immediately. "May we see them? These are exactly the voices we need to hear." The first video featured a mother from Canada whose daughter had been treated for a rare condition at a hospital in the United States. Through tears of gratitude, she described how the international collaboration had saved her child's life and expressed hope that more families could benefit from such partnerships. The second video came from a father in Japan whose son had participated in an experimental treatment program in Germany, detailing how the cultural exchange had been as healing for their family as the medical intervention. President watched the videos with intense focus, occasionally glancing at Princess Isabella to gauge her reaction. Her face reflected a mixture of sadness for the family's struggles and determination to help create more opportunities for similar success stories. "This is what we're really talking about," she said quietly when the videos ended. "Not policies or programs, but parents who would do anything to help their children, and children who deserve every possible chance at a healthy future." Prince Alexander moved closer to his wife and took her hand. "Isabella, are you certain you want to take on something this demanding while you're still in treatment? This initiative could easily become a full-time commitment." Princess Isabella squeezed his hand and smiled with a resolve that filled the ancient hall. "Alexander, this initiative isn't separate from my treatment. It is part of my treatment. Working to help other families gives my own struggle meaning and purpose. Besides, if we wait until life is perfectly convenient, we'll never accomplish anything meaningful." Doctor had been quietly reviewing medical journals on her laptop throughout their discussion. "Your Royal Highness, there's actually substantial research supporting your instinct about the therapeutic value of helping others. Patients who engage in meaningful service work during their own treatment often report better emotional outcomes, stronger immune function, and improved treatment compliance." "Then we're not just helping other families," President observed with growing excitement. "We're potentially improving Isabella's own healing process by giving her an opportunity to channel her experience into something positive and productive." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of James, President's senior communications director, who had been coordinating with the castle's communications team to manage media coverage of the visit. His expression suggested both excitement and concern. "Mr. President, we have a situation developing. Word of your extended private meeting with their Royal Highnesses has leaked to the international press. Initial reports are speculating about everything from secret trade negotiations to rumors about Princess Isabella's health. We need to provide some kind of statement soon, or the speculation is going to spiral out of control." President looked at Prince Alexander and Princess Isabella. "How much are you comfortable sharing publicly about what we've been discussing?" Princess Isabella stood up and walked to one of the tall windows overlooking the castle grounds. In the distance, she could see the lights of the village where many of her subjects lived, people who had sent cards and letters during her illness, families who were facing their own challenges and hoping for better days ahead. "I think," she said slowly, "that we should be completely transparent about the Isabella initiative, not the detailed implementation plans, but the basic concept and our commitment to making it happen." She turned back to face the group. "People are going to find out anyway, and if we try to keep it secret, it will become a political story instead of a human story. But if we present it honestly, as an effort to help families facing health crises, it could inspire public support that makes the initiative even more effective." Prince Alexander nodded in agreement. "Isabella's right. This initiative belongs to the people it's meant to serve, not to us. The more transparent we are about our intentions and process, the more likely we are to succeed in creating something genuinely helpful." President pulled out his phone and began composing a message to his communications team. "We'll prepare a joint statement for release within the hour. Nothing political, nothing diplomatic in the traditional sense. Just three people who believe that healing happens through connection and hope, and who are committed to creating opportunities for more families to experience that healing." As the evening progressed and their planning became more detailed, the ancient stones of castle seemed to absorb the energy and hope that filled the great hall. Servants moved quietly through the space, lighting candles and adding logs to the massive fireplace as the autumn night grew cool outside. The combination of modern technology and medieval created a surreal but fitting backdrop for their unprecedented collaboration. Princess Isabella had filled several pages with handwritten notes, her elegant script capturing ideas that ranged from practical logistics to philosophical principles. "We need to establish ground rules," she said, looking up from her writing. "First and foremost, patient privacy and family consent must be absolutely protected. Second, no family should ever feel pressured to participate in exchange programs or international cooperation. Third, cultural and religious differences must be respected and accommodated in every aspect of our programs. And fourth," President added, "this initiative should complement existing healthcare systems rather than replacing or competing with them. We're not trying to reinvent medicine. We're trying to enhance the support systems that help families navigate medical challenges." Doctor had been working on her laptop throughout the discussion, researching existing international medical programs, and identifying potential partners for their initiative. There are already some excellent models we can build upon, she reported. The International Association of Children's Hospitals has been facilitating knowledge sharing for years, and several European countries have established successful patient exchange programs for rare diseases. Perfect, Princess Isabella replied. We don't need to start from scratch. We can learn from what's already working and expand upon those successes while adding the personal connection element that seems to be missing from purely institutional programs. As midnight approached, the impromptu planning session finally began to wind down. Stacks of notes, preliminary budgets, and contact lists covered the tables, representing the foundation of what could become one of the most meaningful diplomatic initiatives either country had ever undertaken. Princess Isabella carefully wrapped the wooden rose from Montana in its original cloth and placed it in a special box she had retrieved from her private quarters. This will be the first artifact in the Isabella Initiative archive, she announced. A reminder that the most powerful healing often comes through the simplest gestures of hope and connection. President stood up and stretched, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated by the evening's work. When I boarded Air Force One yesterday morning, I thought I was coming here for a routine diplomatic visit. I never imagined we'd end up planning something that could touch thousands of lives. Prince Alexander gathered the scattered papers into organized piles, already thinking about the next steps they would need to take. The real work begins now. Turning these ideas into reality will require sustained effort, significant resources, and the cooperation of people and institutions across multiple countries. But tonight, Princess Isabella said with a satisfied smile, we've proven that it's possible to honor both diplomatic responsibilities and human compassion. We've shown that personal experiences can be transformed into public service and that hope truly can be shared across any distance. 6 months after that transformative evening at Castle, the world had witnessed the most remarkable diplomatic success story of the decade. The Isabella Initiative had grown from a conversation between 3 people into a comprehensive international program that was already changing lives across multiple continents. The early morning sun streamed through the windows of the Oval Office as President reviewed the latest reports from participating hospitals and families. The pilot program between the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and the Royal Children's Medical Center had exceeded every expectation. 23 families had participated in various exchange programs, from virtual reality connections that allowed children to visit each other's hospital rooms to actual family exchanges where parents and patients spent weeks receiving treatment and support in partner institutions. Most remarkably, clinical outcomes had improved across both participating hospitals, with patients showing faster recovery times, better treatment compliance, and significantly improved emotional. Emma, now 24 and working as a pediatric social worker, had become one of the initiative's most effective advocates. Her personal experience with serious illness, combined with her professional training, made her uniquely qualified to help design programs that truly served patient and family needs. She had spent the previous month working directly with Princess Isabella to establish guidelines for the expanding program. The president's morning briefing was interrupted by an urgent call from Prince Alexander. Despite the 6-hour time difference, the prince's excitement was immediately apparent through the secure video connection that linked the Oval Office with his private study at Castle. Prince Alexander said, using the informal address that had become natural between them, I have extraordinary news. Isabella's latest medical results show that she's in complete remission. Her doctors are calling it remarkable, but she insists that the Isabella Initiative played a crucial role in her healing. President felt a wave of relief and joy wash over him. Throughout the months of developing their program, Princess Isabella's health had remained a constant concern underlying all their planning. To hear that she was not only surviving but thriving felt like a personal victory as well as a medical miracle. That's incredible news, Alexander. How is she feeling? What do the doctors think about her long-term prognosis? She's stronger than she's been in over a year, Prince Alexander replied with unmistakable happiness in his voice. But more than that, she's found a sense of purpose that seems to energize everything she does. The doctors say that her positive outlook and sense of meaningful engagement have been significant factors in her recovery. Through the video connection, President could see Princess Isabella entering the study behind her husband. She looked radiant, her color healthy and her smile bright with the confidence of someone who had faced tremendous challenges and emerged victorious. She was carrying a thick folder and what appeared to be several carved wooden objects. "Mr. President," Princess Isabella said as she joined the video call, "I hope you don't mind my interrupting, but I have something wonderful to share with you and Emma." She held up one of the wooden objects, and President could see that it was another hand-carved rose, similar to the one Emma had given her but clearly made by different hands. "This arrived yesterday from a little boy named Timothy in San Francisco. His grandfather carved it for me after hearing about the original rose from Montana. But this one is different. It's made from cherry wood, and he included a note saying that cherry wood represents new beginnings and fresh hope." President was deeply moved by the gesture, understanding that the simple carved rose represented something much larger than a single gift. "It sounds like the spirit of what we started is spreading far beyond our original programs." "That's exactly what I wanted to discuss with you," Princess Isabella continued, her voice filled with excitement. "We've received hundreds of letters from families around the world asking how they can participate in the Isabella Initiative. Children wanting to pen pal with other patients, parents offering to host families who need to travel for treatment, doctors suggesting new partnership opportunities." She opened the folder she had been carrying and spread several documents across the table where Prince Alexander could hold them up to the camera. "We've documented requests from 16 different countries, including some places we never considered in our original planning. There's a children's hospital in Kenya that wants to establish connections with pediatric centers in Canada, a research facility in Australia that has breakthrough treatments they want to share with institutions in South America." President leaned back in his chair, simultaneously thrilled by the program's success and overwhelmed by its rapid expansion. The logistics of coordinating that many international partnerships would be incredibly complex. "Which is why," Prince Alexander interjected with a knowing smile, "Isabella has developed a proposal that I think you're going to find both brilliant and completely manageable." Princess Isabella's eyes lit up as she began explaining her vision. "What if we created regional hubs for the Isabella Initiative? Instead of trying to coordinate everything from Washington, and we establish centers in major cities around the world, each responsible for facilitating partnerships and programs within their geographic regions." She pointed to a world map that she had marked with potential hub locations. London could coordinate European programs, Tokyo could handle Asia-Pacific partnerships, could manage South American initiatives, and Nairobi could oversee African collaborations. Each hub would operate according to the same basic principles we've established, but they could adapt programs to local cultures, healthcare systems, and family needs. The elegance of the solution was immediately apparent to President. Rather than attempting to micromanage a global program from two primary locations, the hub system would allow for organic growth while maintaining quality standards and core values. "The funding model would be collaborative too," Princess Isabella continued. "Each participating country would contribute resources based on their capacity, and the hubs would share best practices and innovations across the entire network." President found himself nodding enthusiastically as the full scope of her vision became clear. This could become the largest international healthcare cooperation initiative in history. But most importantly, Princess Isabella emphasized, it would remain focused on individual families and personal connections. No matter how large the program grows, every aspect would be designed to ensure that children and parents facing health crises feel supported, connected, and hopeful. Prince Alexander had been quietly reviewing additional documents while his wife explained the hub concept. "We've already received preliminary commitments from potential hub partners in 4 cities. The enthusiasm is remarkable. Everyone wants to be part of something that's making such a clear difference in people's lives." Through the video connection, President could see the wooden rose from Montana sitting on the table beside the new rose from San Francisco. The two carved flowers, separated by thousands of miles and created by strangers who would never meet, somehow perfectly symbolized the connections that the Isabella Initiative was fostering around the world. "There's something else," Princess Isabella said, her tone becoming more reflective. "Emma sent me a letter yesterday with an idea that I think you need to hear directly from her." President's curiosity was immediately piqued. His daughter had been heavily involved in the initiative's development, but she typically shared her ideas with him directly rather than routing them through Princess Isabella. She wants to establish the Isabella Initiative Foundation as a permanent, independent organization, Princess Isabella explained. Something that could continue operating regardless of changes in political leadership or governmental priorities. The president considered this carefully. While he was proud of the initiative's association with his administration, Emma's instinct to ensure its long-term sustainability was completely sound. The families who had come to depend on the program's support deserved the security of knowing it would continue indefinitely. "She's absolutely right," President said finally. "This initiative has grown beyond any individual administration or royal family. It belongs to the families it serves and the medical professionals who make it work." Princess Isabella smiled warmly. Emma suggested that the foundation be governed by a board that includes former patients and their families, medical professionals from participating institutions, and representatives from each regional hub. She specifically said that the people who have lived these experiences should have the strongest voices in determining how the foundation develops. As their video call continued for another hour, the three of them worked through the details of transitioning the Isabella Initiative from a diplomatic project to an independent foundation. The complexity was significant, but the potential impact was extraordinary. What had begun as a conversation about personal struggles and shared hope was evolving into a permanent institution dedicated to ensuring that no family would face health crises in isolation. When the call finally ended, President sat quietly in the Oval Office, reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this moment. The wooden rose from Montana sat on his desk, a daily reminder of how small gestures of hope could grow into movements that changed the world. Later that afternoon, Emma called to discuss the foundation proposal in detail. Her voice carried the same passion and determination that had driven her to share her wooden rose with Princess Isabella months earlier. "Dad, I've been working with families in the initiative programs for months now, and what I keep hearing is that they want to know this support will always be available. They don't want to worry that a change in government or political priorities could interrupt programs that have become lifelines for them." President listened carefully as his daughter outlined her vision for the foundation's structure, funding model, and governance approach. Her professional experience working with families, combined with her personal understanding of serious illness, had given her insights that even the most experienced healthcare administrators might miss. "The most important thing," Emma continued, "is that the foundation stays true to the original spirit of personal connection and hope-sharing. The moment it becomes just another medical bureaucracy, it will lose what makes it special." As President ended the call with his daughter and prepared for his next appointment, he found himself thinking about the unexpected ways that life could transform personal struggles into opportunities for service. Princess Isabella's illness had become the foundation for her most meaningful work. Emma's childhood health crisis had shaped her career and her passion for helping other families. His own experience as a worried father had opened his heart to diplomatic possibilities he had never previously considered. The Isabella Initiative had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, not because it was perfectly planned or expertly managed, but because it was built on authentic human experiences and genuine desire to help others. As it evolved into an independent foundation with global reach, that authenticity would remain its greatest strength and most important legacy. Outside the Oval Office windows, the late afternoon sun was setting over Washington, but President knew that in hospitals and homes around the world, the work of hope sharing and healing would continue long into the night and far into the future.